Right, so I think my Land Rover's been losing a bit of compression and spewing a bit of oil and diesel down the side of itself. So we're going to change the washers on the injectors to try and fix this. So here we have the side of the engine with the injectors on, and as you can see there's all sorts of stuff splattered down the side of it, a mixture of oil, mud and probably diesel. First things first, we need to get the plastic cover off the engine, and oddly it's held on with the oil filler cap, which is probably also a source of oil leak. However, changing a washer isn't quite such an interesting video. Before we take anything apart, we want to give the engine a good wipe down, just to make sure there's no chunks or oil or anything extra going to fall down those injector holes once we have the injectors out. The next step is to remove the high pressure fuel lines from the top of the injectors, and you'll need this 17mm spanner to do that. Once you've cracked the nuts off on the injectors, you can undo them by hand, and then you just have to move them out of the way a little bit just to get the injectors out, but we'll get to that in a minute. To remove the fuel overflow lines, you need a size 11 spanner. The next thing to remove is the fuel overflow lines, and on my Land Rover the lines are very securely on, and I've removed them before once and had to replace them, so this time I'm not going to bother, and we're just going to undo all of them and remove it all in one piece, leaving them all still connected together. As with the main fuel lines, once you've cracked these off, they should undo fairly easily just with fingers. Once you've undone all of the little banjo bolts, then the rest of it you should be able to feed the pipes up and under the main fuel lines that you've undone, and just lie the little assembly on top of the engine so that you don't lose any of the copper washers. The next bit, you're going to need a 13mm spanner, and we're going to remove the nut that's just in front of the injector, and this is the one that holds it into the engine when the engine's firing. And because of that, I would expect this nut to be fairly tight and hard to undo to begin with, because it has to hold back quite a lot of pressure. The nut I'm undoing has got fairly good access to it compared to the other three, and so when it came to undoing them, I moved to a socket, which allowed me to kind of weave past all the bits of pipe and oil breather and stuff that was in the way, and it was a lot easier, but obviously you can't see as much when you're trying to film, so we used a spanner on this first one. Once you've removed the nut, you then need to remove the tiny little plate that's holding the injector in. So to remove the injector, you're going to need a 15mm spanner and an 11mm spanner, unless your injectors are in particularly loosely. The 11mm spanner goes where that little plate that you just removed was, and you rest it on top of the stud and push down on it, and this helps kind of slowly try and pry the injector out, and while using the 15mm spanner to just wiggle the injector backwards and forwards just to help loosen it up. I found once the injector had come up about half an inch, 12mm ish, you could just pick it out by your hand, but you'll know what it feels like once you have a go. You'll want to give them a quick wipe down to remove any excess oil. Mine had quite a lot on the sides of them, which implies that the seals weren't sealing. And it's now time to remove the copper washers that we're replacing. And mine were on pretty tightly, and I just used this really skinny knife that I kind of use for everything, just to kind of pry the edges up until the washers popped off. You need to remove any build-up of carbon that's on the end of the injector to make sure that the new washers seal properly. And so that's what I'm doing with this small metal stick. After having removed the injector, I had a quick look down the hole where it was just to see what was down there, and there was a fair amount of oil and a few chunks of carbon that had fallen off the end of the injector when I pulled it out. So I made a giant cotton wool bud, and I used that to kind of remove any excess oil and bits that were down the hole, trying to be careful not to push anything new down there. Okay, so to make sure the washer goes on the right way up, and this is the right way up with the ridge pointing upwards, it's got a dimple on the other side, we're going to put a skewer down here, down this hole, okay, right on top of the piston, so it's sat there, and then to get it, make sure it lines up on the right spot, you put it on here the right way up, and it can't flip over because there's a stick down the middle of it. So it has to be the right way up at the bottom there. And it's nice and flat in the hole, and you pull the skewer out and the washer is the right way up. And now all we've got to do is pop the injector back in. Then you've got the injector. This bit has to point this way. So you then get your injector, slide it down the nice clean hole. Just give it a little twist here and there just to help it find its way down. And that's it in the right place. And then all you've got to do is pop its little plate, little thing back on, holds it in, and then its slightly oily nut. Like that. And then give it a tweak up to however tight you want. Nice and tight. And now a quick time lapse of me doing the other three, which are all done the exact same way as the first one. That's all the injectors back on, in, and all of their little washers replaced. As you can see, these may have been sealing, but that one definitely wasn't. So they're quite mucky on both sides, so hopefully with a bit of a clean there, that one probably sealing on that side. Hopefully there will be less leaks down the side of the engine. But there's a few more things to fix before we clean it. But for now, let's see if it starts again. It's probably going to chug for a while because, well, it's a Land Rover and I've let all the air into the system. Alright, that one. Ooh, not much feeling that. Right. Alright, come on. That's surprising. Where's the A? Cool, very few air bubbles. So there's going to be a few more Land Rover based videos pre-winter, but generally if you want to see more random things, please remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you want to help us grow as a channel, please remember to like the videos as well, and I will see you next time.